The security alert flashed red across every screen in the building. 3 minutes until total data breach. Daniel Carter had 12 seconds to prove he wasn't just another desperate single dad begging for scraps. 2 hours earlier, he'd walked into TechVenture Corp's glass tower on Market Street, wearing a flannel shirt his 7-year-old daughter had ironed for him that morning, the crease slightly crooked, where her small hands had tried their best. Emma had stood on her step stool in their daily city kitchen at 6:47 a.m., tongue between her teeth in concentration, pressing the iron with the seriousness of a surgeon. The steam had fogged her glasses, the ones with the purple frames she'd picked out herself, and when she'd finished, she'd looked up at him with those worried eyebrows she'd inherited from her mother, and asked, "Is it perfect, Daddy?" And he'd lied, because the crease was crooked and his heart was breaking, and he'd said, "It's perfect, baby. You're perfect." Now, standing in the marble lobby of TechVenture's headquarters, he touched that crooked crease and felt the weight of everything riding on the next 2 hours. The receptionist, Laura, according to her nameplate, had swept her eyes over his weathered Jansport backpack the moment he stepped through the doors. The kind construction workers carry, the kind with a broken zipper he'd fixed with duct tape because buying a new one meant choosing between that and Emma's after-school snack fund. Laura's professional smile had frozen mid-watt. "Are you here for maintenance?" The question hung in the air. Daniel had gotten used to that question. At the grocery store, the bank, the parent-teacher conferences where he was the only dad in a sea of yoga pant moms who volunteered for bake sales and knew each other's Instagram handles. He looked like maintenance. Flannel shirt, 10 years old. Khaki Dockers with a faded knee from when he'd fallen helping Emma learn to ride her bike last summer. Scuffed brown loafers that used to be expensive, but now just looked tired. "No," he'd said quietly. "I have an interview. 2 o'clock. Daniel Carter." Laura had blinked, checked her computer. Double-checked. "Oh, yes, of course." The smile rebooted, but different now. Pity instead of warmth. "Have a seat. Someone will be right with you." He wasn't here for maintenance. He was here for a junior developer position. $52,000 a year, barely enough to cover Emma's after-school care at Jefferson Elementary. The medical bills still piling up 3 years after his wife's funeral. The rent on their 1-bedroom apartment, where Emma slept on a pull-out couch and never once complained. The interview panel would laugh at his resume in exactly 47 minutes. He knew this because he'd seen it before, at 3 other companies this month. They'd flip past the first page, Next-Tech Solutions, Senior Security Architect, Pentagon Contracts, $280,000 salary, and land on the second page. The Gap, 2020 to 2025. 5 years of nothing. 5 years that might as well have been 5 centuries in Silicon Valley time. They'd call his portfolio outdated, his GitHub stale. One of them, probably the VP, the Stanford kid with the hoodie and the sneakers that cost more than Daniel's monthly grocery budget, would ask if he knew what React was. Voice dripping with the kind of pity reserved for men who'd clearly given up, who'd let themselves go, who'd chosen diapers and bedtime stories, overcommits and pull requests, and climbing the ladder while it was there to be climbed. Another would suggest customer support, as if debugging people's Wi-Fi passwords was the natural endpoint for a man whose best days were behind him. But first, something was about to go very, very wrong in that building. And Daniel Carter, the man they were about to reject, the man they'd dismiss as technical debt in human form, the man whose hands still shook when he thought about how close they were to losing everything, was the only person in San Francisco who could stop it. The waiting room smelled like expensive coffee and the kind of optimism that comes with unlimited VC funding. Daniel sat in a chrome chair designed by someone who'd never had to sit in a chair for more than 5 minutes at a time. Uncomfortable by design. Keep them moving. Keep them hungry. A poster on the wall read, "Move fast and break things," in that corporate font that's supposed to look rebellious, but just looks corporate. His backpack sat at his feet. Emma had decorated it with stickers. World's best dad in glitter letters, a unicorn, a rainbow, a crayon drawing of the two of them holding hands, labeled in her 7-year-old handwriting, "Daddy with me forever." He'd tried to peel them off this morning, standing in their tiny bathroom at 5 a.m. because he couldn't sleep. Professional. You need to look professional. But his fingers had hovered over that crayon drawing, and he couldn't do it. If they rejected him because of his daughter's stickers, then they were rejecting all of him anyway. He pulled out the moleskin notebook, black leather, worn soft at the corners, from 5 years of being carried, but never opened. Sarah had given it to him on their 10th anniversary, 3 months before the diagnosis. They'd been at that Italian restaurant in North Beach, the one with the candles and wine bottles, and the waiter who sang opera between courses. She'd slid the wrapped box across the table, nervous in the way she always got when she thought maybe she'd spent too much. Maybe he wouldn't like it. He'd opened it. The notebook. Blank pages. Cream-colored. Thick enough to hold fountain pen ink. Inside the front cover, her handwriting, looping, optimistic. The handwriting of someone who still believed in grand gestures and second acts and happily ever afters. For all the brilliant ideas I know you still have, don't let your code die. S. She'd been right about the brilliant ideas, wrong about the second acts. He hadn't opened this notebook in 5 years. Not since the night she died. The night he'd sat in the hospital parking lot in the Tesla he'd soon have to sell, Emma asleep in her car seat behind him, and made a promise to a ghost that he would keep going, that he would matter, that their daughter would see him be somebody. He'd broken that promise somewhere between the 3rd round of chemo and the funeral, and the first time Emma asked, "Why doesn't Daddy go to work like other daddies?" Now he opened it. The pages fell to a protocol he'd written in 2018, before everything. Handwritten pseudo-code for a zero-trust authentication system. The foundation of what would become SecureFrame, the framework that now protected 40% of Fortune 500 companies' data. The framework TechVenture Corp paid $2 million a year to license from an anonymous creator they'd been trying to hunt down for 4 years. The framework they had no idea he'd built. Daniel traced the code with his finger. He could still remember writing this. 2 a.m. at the Nextech offices, hopped up on cold brew and the kind of focus that only comes when you're building something that matters. Sarah had been pregnant with Emma. They'd had the Palo Alto house with the good school district and the Tesla in the driveway, and stock options that would have set them up for life if he'd just stayed 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks. That's all it would have taken. March 2020. The options vested April 15th. $4 million. Life-changing money. Generational wealth. Emma would have gone to Stanford if she wanted. Or anywhere. She could have been anything. But Sarah had been dying, and Emma was 5, and asking why Mommy couldn't get out of bed. And the choice had been so clear, it wasn't even a choice. You don't stay at work when your wife is dying. You don't optimize for stock options when your daughter is crying herself to sleep every night. You don't sacrifice the people you love for the things that will never love you back. So he'd walked away. 3 weeks before the biggest payday of his life, he'd walked into his boss's office and said, "I'm done. My wife needs me." His boss, Harrison, good guy, father of 3, genuinely sympathetic, had tried to talk him out of it. "Take family leave. We'll hold your position. The options will still vest." But family leave was 12 weeks, and Sarah had been given 6 months, which turned out to be 8, which turned out to be the longest 8 months of Daniel's life. And after she died, he couldn't go back. Couldn't sit in that office with its standing desks and cold brew on tap and people who talked about disrupting industries, while his daughter was at home asking when Mommy was coming back. So he'd stayed home, became a full-time dad, learned to French braid hair from YouTube videos, figured out the politics of second-grade birthday parties, sold the Tesla, sold the house, moved to the one-bedroom in Daly City, where the heat didn't always work, and the neighbors played music until 2 a.m., and Emma learned to fall asleep with headphones in, listening to the Frozen soundtrack on loop. That had been 3 years ago. Since then, he'd applied to 40 jobs a month, sent out 440 applications, got 3 interviews, 0 offers. Recruiters saw the gap, 2020 to 2025, and assumed washed up. Obsolete. A relic from the jQuery era who probably still wrote CSS in pixels instead of rems and didn't know what a service worker was. Technical debt in human form. This morning, Emma had found him at their kitchen table at 5 a.m., staring at his laptop, reading the same job posting for the 15th time. Junior full-stack developer, $52,000. Requirements: React, TypeScript, Node.js, 2+ years experience. She'd climbed into his lap, still in her pajamas with the little stars on them, and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Can't sleep, Daddy?" "Just getting ready for today, baby." "Will they like you?" He'd looked at her. 7 years old. Already worried about him. Already carrying the weight of being the reason he'd given everything up. She didn't say it, but he saw it in her eyes. The same worried eyebrows Sarah used to get when she was stressed about money, about his long hours, about whether they were doing this parenting thing right. "I think so," he'd lied. Again. Lying was becoming his primary parenting skill. Emma had wriggled out of his lap and disappeared into her room. He'd heard the closet door open, a scraping sound. When she came back, she was dragging the iron by its cord, the step stool under her other arm. "I'll make your shirt perfect." He'd tried to stop her. "Baby, you don't have to." "I want to." She'd plugged in the iron with the concentration of a demolitions expert defusing a bomb, set it to cotton, waited for it to heat up. Mrs. Kim says if you want something to happen, you have to do your part. God does his part. You do yours. Emma had been going to Mrs. Kim's after-school care for 2 years. Mrs. Kim was 73, Korean, a grandmother of 5 who ran the program out of the church basement for $600 a month, which was still $200 more than Daniel could actually afford. But Emma loved Mrs. Kim. Mrs. Kim taught her Korean words and made her kimchi fried rice and told her stories about growing up in Seoul and, apparently, dispensed theological advice about the division of labor between humans and the divine. Emma had ironed his shirt with the iron set too hot, which meant she'd had to go slow, careful, the steam fogging her glasses. The crease came out crooked. But she'd been so proud, holding it up, asking if it was perfect. And he'd lied. Again. Now, sitting in this waiting room with a backpack covered in his daughter's stickers and a shirt with a crooked crease, Daniel closed the notebook and tried to remember how to breathe. His phone buzzed, a text from Emma's school. "Reminder, pick up today at 6 p.m., late fee after 6:15 p.m., $15, 6 p.m. That gave him 4 hours. The interview was at 2, should be done by 3. Then he'd drive back to Daly City, pick up Emma, take her home. Maybe they'd get McDonald's if there was enough in the checking account. Let her get a Happy Meal and play in the play place while he sat in a plastic booth and pretended everything was fine. He did the math in his head. He'd done this math so many times it was automatic now. Muscle memory for poverty. $52,000 salary. Minus taxes. Call it $40,000 take home. Divided by 12 months. $3 per month. Minus rent on the 1-bedroom, $150. Minus Emma's after-school care, $600. Minus groceries, $400. Minus utilities, $150. Minus car insurance, $120. Minus gas, $80. Minus minimum payment on the medical debt, $200. Minus Emma's health insurance through Covered California, $180. That left $750 through Lars. For everything else, clothes, school supplies, Birthday presents, the time the car broke down, the time Emma got strep throat and needed antibiotics, the time the landlord raised the rent by $50 and Daniel had to start buying the store brand cereal instead of the name brand kind Emma liked. $753 to hold their entire lives together. If he got this job. His hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs and counted to 10. Sarah used to do that when she was anxious. Count to 10. Breathe. You're okay. Everything's okay. Except it wasn't. Because 3 years after her funeral, he was still living in the wreckage, still applying to jobs that paid a fifth of what he used to make, still lying to his daughter about whether they could afford the field trip to the aquarium, still waiting for someone to look at him and see something other than a cautionary tale about what happens when you choose family over ambition. It had been different once. Next Tech Solutions, 2010 to 2020. Senior security architect. He'd been the guy they called when government contractors needed penetration testing, when Fortune 500 companies wanted to know if their systems could survive a state-sponsored attack, when the Pentagon needed someone to design protocols that wouldn't just keep out hackers, but would keep out nation-states with billion-dollar cyber warfare budgets. He'd published white papers under the pseudonym Cypher 77. 3 of them. Dense, technical, brilliant. Cited over 12,000 times. He'd mentored half of Silicon Valley's current CISOs without them ever knowing his real name. He'd built systems that protected medical records, financial data, classified military intelligence. He'd mattered. And then Sarah got sick, and mattering meant something different. It meant being there when she woke up from chemo nauseous and scared. It meant lying in bed with her at 3 a.m. when she couldn't sleep because the pain was too much and the morphine made her hallucinate. It meant holding Emma while Sarah slept, reading her Goodnight Moon for the 1,000th time, explaining why Mommy was so tired, why Mommy's hair was falling out, why Mommy couldn't pick her up anymore. It meant walking away from the career, the money, the stock options, the legacy. Walking away from being someone to just being present. Sarah had died 8 months after his last day at Nextech, stage 4 ovarian cancer. He'd held her hand at the end, in the hospice room with the painting of the beach on the wall and the machine that beeped every 7 seconds. She'd been unconscious for 3 days. The doctor said she couldn't hear him. He'd talk to her anyway. "I'm scared," he'd whispered. "I don't know how to do this without you." She'd squeezed his hand. Once. Barely there. But he'd felt it. And then she was gone, and he was a single dad with a 5-year-old daughter who kept asking when Mommy was coming home, and medical debt that turned out to be $47,000 even after insurance, and a LinkedIn profile that screamed "has been" in every gap and every outdated skill. That had been 3 years ago. He'd tried to stay in tech. Really tried. Rebuilt his portfolio. Learned React, Vue, Next.js, all the frameworks that hadn't existed or hadn't mattered when he'd been writing low-level security protocols. Took online courses while Emma watched Bluey. Did coding challenges on LeetCode after she went to bed. Updated his GitHub with projects that were supposed to look impressive, but just looked desperate. Vanilla JavaScript to-do app, refactored for hooks. Weather dashboard using OpenWeatherMap API. Full-stack authentication system with JWT and bcrypt. Projects a bootcamp grad would put together, not the work of someone who'd once designed penetration testing frameworks for the Pentagon, but the resume gap was a black hole. Every recruiter saw it and made the same calculation, risk versus reward. Sure, maybe this guy used to be good, but 5 years out? That's an eternity. He probably doesn't even know what ES6 is. He's probably still using var instead of let. He's probably going to need 6 months of hand-holding just to understand our code base. Why take that risk when there are 23-year-olds fresh out of Stanford who've been coding since they were 12, who know the latest frameworks, who don't have to leave at 3:30 p.m. every day to pick up their kids, who won't ask about health insurance or PTO, or whether they can work from home on Thursdays. This was his third interview this month. The first had been at a Series A startup that made AI-powered meal planning apps. The interviewer, 26, founder, CEO, had looked at Daniel's resume and said, "So you took 5 years off. That's cool. Sabbatical? My wife died." "Oh, sorry, man, that's heavy." Long pause. "So, anyway, tell me about your experience with machine learning." Daniel hadn't gotten a call back. The second interview had been at an enterprise software company that made HR management tools. The panel, 4 people, all under 30, had been polite, professional. They'd asked him to whiteboard a solution to a problem involving binary search trees. He'd solved it in 6 minutes. Optimal solution. Clean code. They'd nodded, made notes, and at the end, the hiring manager had said, "We're looking for someone with more recent experience, but we'll definitely keep your resume on file." Translation: "You're old, your skills are outdated, and we have 50 other candidates who don't have," keeps his daughter's drawings in his backpack, energy. Now, sitting in TechVenture Corp's waiting room, Daniel wondered if this would be different. Probably not. The job posting had been generic: fast-paced environment, opportunity to make an impact, competitive salary, which meant long hours, undefined expectations, and $52,000 is competitive if you're comparing it to Starbucks. But it was a job, and $52,000 was survivable. Barely. He could make it work. Cut the grocery budget, move to a cheaper apartment, maybe find a roommate, though the idea of a stranger living with him and Emma made his skin crawl. He could make it work. His phone buzzed again. Emma. A text sent at 1:47 p.m., right after lunch. "Daddy, did they say yes yet? I prayed for you at lunch. Mrs. Kim says God listens extra when kids pray. I love you. Also, I made you a drawing but forgot to put it in your bag. It's you as a superhero." His vision blurred. He blinked hard. "Not here. You can cry in the car after." Not here. His phone wallpaper was Emma's drawing from this morning. Stick figure daddy with a cape, flying over a building labeled job in crayon. Her handwriting at the bottom, "Super Dad saves the day." She'd given it to him at breakfast, along with a bowl of off-brand Cheerios, because the name brand kind was $2 more expensive, and $2 mattered now in ways it never had when he was making $280,000. "That's you," she'd said, pointing at the caped figure. "You're gonna get the job, and then everything's gonna be okay." He'd hugged her so hard she'd squeaked. "I love you, baby." "Love you too, Daddy. Don't forget your lunch." She'd handed him a paper bag. Inside, a peanut butter sandwich on store-brand white bread, an apple she'd drawn a smiley face on with Sharpie, and a note that said, "You're the best. Emma." He was going to lose it. Right here, in this waiting room. He was going to start crying, and they were going to call security and... "Daniel Carter?" He looked up. A woman stood in the doorway. Clipboard. Tight smile. Mid-20s. Long, dark hair. Business casual in that tech company way where it's not really business and not really casual. Just expensive jeans and a blouse that probably cost more than his monthly car payment. "That's me." Daniel stood, grabbed his backpack. Emma's stickers caught the light. He saw the woman's eyes flick to the unicorn, to the world's best dad glitter, to the crayon drawing. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted. Judgment, maybe. Or pity. He couldn't tell anymore. "Great. I'm Jessica, senior developer here. The team's excited to meet you." Her smile was professional, warm the way customer service is warm. "Conference rooms this way." He followed her through the open floor plan. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling, a dozen standing desks with dual monitors, A ping-pong table in the corner that had probably been used twice. A neon sign that said, "Move fast and break things," like it was a commandment instead of a corporate cliché. Junior developers looked up as he passed. Hoodies, sneakers, AirPods dangling. One guy had a skateboard propped against his desk. Another had a French press and a bag of single-origin beans from some roaster in Oakland that probably charged $40 a pound. They looked at Daniel, the flannel, the old backpack, the crooked crease, and then looked away, back to their screens, their Slack channels, their lives that didn't include ironing shirts at 6 a.m. for interviews that were probably going to end in rejection anyway. Daniel caught a Slack notification on one monitor as he passed. "Old guy interview in Fishbowl." Someone had replied, "RIP, LOL." The Fishbowl, that's what they called it. He'd read about it on Glassdoor. Conference room on the 12th floor with floor-to-ceiling glass walls, where they conducted interviews so everyone could watch. Transparency, they called it. Performance art, more like. Gladiator combat for the PowerPoint generation. Jessica swiped her keycard. The door opened. "Here we are. Want anything? Water? Coffee? We have oat milk if you're into that." "I'm fine, thank you." The room was exactly what he'd expected. White table, gray chairs, whiteboard on one wall, floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides, and glass walls facing the open office. Fishbowl. 4 people sat around the table. Brandon Yai, VP of Engineering, 29 years old. Hoodie, dark gray. Expensive. The kind that costs $400 and looks like it costs $40, which is the aesthetic. Sneakers that probably had a waiting list. Hair artfully disheveled in that way that requires product and effort disguised as effortlessness. His resume was on the company's About page. Stanford CS 17, Google L5, 2 years. Left to found a crypto startup that burned through $3 million in seed funding and folded 6 months later, which somehow made him more hireable, not less. VP at 27, the kind of trajectory that only happens when you're smart, lucky, and completely unencumbered by self-doubt, or a family to take care of. Kyle, tech lead. Laptop open. Barely looking up. Early 30s, maybe. Beard. Flannel, but the expensive kind, from Patagonia, that signals, "I care about the environment, but also make $180K a year." Wedding ring. Kids, probably, but the kind of kids that come with a spouse who handles the logistics. Priya, product manager, 30-ish. Sharp eyes, the only one who smiled like she meant it. And Jessica, who took a seat and opened her laptop like this was just another Tuesday. "Daniel, hey, sit." Brandon gestured to the chair across from them. Casual, friendly, the kind of friendly that comes easy when you hold all the power. "Want anything? Water? Coffee? I can have Laura." "I'm fine, thank you." "Cool. Cool." Brandon leaned back in his chair, relaxed, confident. "So, let's jump in. Tell us about yourself." Daniel had rehearsed this. "I'm Daniel Carter. I have 10 years of experience in software architecture, primarily focused on security and infrastructure. I'm looking to transition back into full-stack development." "Wait, sorry." Brandon held up a hand. Friendly, curious. "Back into? So you were in full-stack before?" "Not exactly. My background is more back-end. Security protocols, penetration testing, infrastructure architecture. But I've been teaching myself front-end frameworks, React, Vue, TypeScript, over the last few years." Brandon nodded slowly, opened the manila folder in front of him. Daniel's resume. 3 pages that told a story with a hole in the middle, a crater. A before and after, that didn't add up to anything good. "Okay, yeah. I see that." Brandon's finger traced down the first page. "Next Tech Solutions, 2010 to 2020. Senior Security Architect. Pentagon contracts. Very impressive. His finger stopped. Then, nothing. 2020 to 2025. That's, what, 5 years? Here it comes. Daniel kept his voice level. My wife had cancer. Stage 4 ovarian. I took care of her full time. Then, after she passed, I stayed home with our daughter. The room went quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when someone says something that's too real, too raw for a job interview. Kyle's fingers stopped typing. Jessica looked at her coffee. Priya's expression softened into something that might have been sympathy, or might have been the same calculation every interviewer makes. Is this guy going to be a liability? Brandon nodded slowly. Okay, I'm really sorry, man. That's really hard. I can't imagine. He closed the folder, gentle, pitying. But here's the thing, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Tech moves fast. Like, really fast. 5 years is like, I don't know, a decade in other industries. React came out in 2013, but hooks came out in 2018, and now everyone's on Next.js 13 with server components. The ecosystem has completely transformed. Daniel's jaw tightened. I've been keeping up. I rebuilt my portfolio. Have you shipped anything, though? Brandon leaned forward. Not aggressive, just curious. Genuinely curious. Like production code, real users, scale. Not recently, but... See, that's the issue. Brandon looked at the panel. Kyle nodded. Jessica was scrolling through something on her laptop. We're shipping features daily. Fast iteration. Continuous deployment. Agile sprints. 2-week cycles. We need people who can hit the ground running. No offense, Daniel, but the gap is... It's a red flag. You've been out of the game for half a decade. That's a lifetime. Outside the glass walls, Daniel saw junior developers glancing over. One nudged another, pointed. They were watching. Of course they were watching. The fishbowl wasn't about transparency. It was about making sure everyone knew who passed and who failed, who was in and who was out, who deserved to be here and who was wasting everyone's time. I can hit the ground running. Daniel's voice was steady, but his hands were under the table, fists clenched, nails digging into his palms. I've done infrastructure work at the highest level, security architecture. I've built systems that handle millions of requests per second. I've designed protocols that... Yeah, I see that. Brandon tapped the resume. But we're not looking for infrastructure. This is a full-stack role. Front end and back end. React on the client. Node on the server. You'd be building features, not architecture. It's a different skill set. Kyle finally looked up from his laptop. Have you worked with our stack? We use SecureFrame for authentication, Versal for deployment, Postgres for persistence, Redis for caching. Familiar with any of that? I know SecureFrame. Brandon's face lit up. Oh, yeah? You've used it. I've worked with it. Extensively. That's great. We love SecureFrame. Honestly, it's the best auth framework out there. Open source, but actually good. Elegant design. Whoever built it was a genius. Brandon laughed. Probably some consortium at MIT or something. The documentation's signed DC, but no one knows who that is. Total mystery. Daniel said nothing. His throat was tight. His chest felt like someone was standing on it. Jessica looked up from her laptop. Wait, you said you worked with SecureFrame extensively? Yes. In what capacity? Daniel hesitated. This was the moment. He could say it. Tell them. But what would that accomplish? They wouldn't believe him. Or they would, and it would make everything worse, because then they'd have to reconcile the man in front of them. Flannel shirt, crooked crease, 5-year gap, with the ghost they'd been worshipping without knowing his name. I used it at Nextech, for client projects. Jessica was still looking at him, something in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or suspicion. But Brandon was already moving on, sliding a laptop across the table. "Okay, let's do a quick tech test. Nothing crazy. Just want to see how you think." Brandon's smile was warm, encouraging. The smile of someone who's about to watch you fail and wants you to know it's okay. "Here's a simple class component. Just refactor it to a functional component with hooks. Should take, 3 minutes? 5, max. Priya, start the timer." Daniel pulled the laptop closer, looked at the screen. It was a basic component. User authentication, state management. Component did mount, component did update. Lifecycle methods from the old days. He could refactor this in his sleep. Convert the class to a function. Replace this state with use state. Replace component did mount with use effect. Simple. Trivial. The kind of thing any developer with 6 months of React experience could do. He put his fingers on the keyboard and realized immediately that something was wrong. The keys were in the wrong place, not QWERTY, Dvorak. The alternative keyboard layout that supposedly increases typing speed by 40% if you spend 3 months relearning where every letter is. His fingers hit H and got D, hit E and got O, hit ET and got EI. He backspaced, tried again. Slower this time, but his muscle memory was fighting him. 20 years of QWERTY typing, screaming at his fingers that they were hitting the wrong keys, even though the screen said they were. 30 seconds. 1 minute. He knew the answer. The refactor was simple, but his hands were betraying him. Every line was a typo, every keystroke wrong. The syntax highlighter was screaming red errors. He looked slow, incompetent, lost. 1 minute 30. Outside the glass, he saw a junior developer take a photo. Another was typing something on his phone. Probably Slack, probably the company channel. Old guy can't even use a keyboard lol. 2 minutes. Time. Brandon's voice was gentle, pitying. "That's okay. It's tough under pressure. I get it." Kyle leaned over, looked at the screen. "Did you just try to use component did mount inside a functional component?" The keyboard's fine, man. It's Dvorak. We all use it here. Faster typing. Better ergonomics." Kyle closed his laptop, looked at Brandon. "I think we've seen enough." Daniel's throat closed, his vision tunneled. This was it. The rejection. Again. The 3rd time this month. The 443rd time since Sarah died. But Priya leaned forward. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" Brandon looked annoyed. "Priya, I think—" "Just one question." Priya's voice was firm. She looked at Daniel. "You said you worked with Secure Frame at Nextech. In what capacity? Were you implementing it? Auditing it?" "What?" Daniel met her eyes. "I used to work on security protocols, penetration testing, infrastructure architecture, for Pentagon contracts." "Yes." "What kind of protocols?" He shouldn't say it. There were NDAs, layers of legal protection, pseudonyms for a reason. But the humiliation was burning his skin, and Emma's text was in his pocket, and he was so goddamn tired of being invisible, of being dismissed, of being the cautionary tale at tech conferences about what happens when you choose your family over your career. Zero trust authentication, intrusion detection systems. I published some white papers under a pseudonym. What pseudonym? The room held its breath. Cypher 77. The silence lasted 3 seconds. It felt like 3 hours. Priya's eyes widened. "Wait, you're... Okay." Brandon stood up, fast, uncomfortable. "Daniel, I appreciate you coming in. I can tell you're smart. I can tell you care. But I don't think this is the right fit." He was already moving toward the door. "We're looking for someone who's current, someone who can integrate with our team's velocity. Someone who... Look, real talk. You seem like a good guy. A really good guy. But have you thought about customer support? Or maybe technical writing? Something less hands-on keyboard. Something that plays to your strengths. Customer support. Technical writing. Something less hands-on keyboard. The words hung in the air. Outside the glass, the junior developers were watching. Waiting. One had his phone up. Recording? Daniel couldn't tell. Brandon extended his hand. No hard feelings, yeah. It's just business. We'll definitely keep your resume on file. Translation. You're never getting a call back. You're going back to your one-bedroom apartment in Daly City. And your daughter, who doesn't understand why Daddy can't afford to buy her the sneakers with the lights in them. And you're going to apply to 40 more jobs next month and get 3 more interviews and hear 3 more versions of "you're not current." And the gap is a red flag. And have you considered customer support? Until you finally just give up and take a job at Geek Squad fixing laptops for $18 an hour, while the systems you built protect half the Fortune 500 and no one ever knows your name. Daniel didn't shake Brandon's hand. He stood, grabbed his backpack, turned toward the door. And then his phone buzzed. It was in his pocket, but it buzzed loud enough that everyone heard it. Brandon paused. Jessica looked up. Kyle frowned. Daniel pulled it out. A text from Emma, sent at 2:47 p.m. Right now. Right this second. Daddy, did they say yes yet? I prayed for you at lunch. Mrs. Kim says God listens extra when kids pray. I love you. Also, I made you a drawing but forgot to put it in your bag. It's you as a superhero. His phone wallpaper lit up behind the text. Emma's crayon drawing. Stick figure daddy with a cape. Flying over a building labeled job. Her handwriting at the bottom, Super Dad saves the day. She'd drawn it this morning while he was in the shower. Left it on the kitchen table with his lunch bag, and the note that said, "You're the best." Something cracked inside him. Not broke. Cracked. Like ice on a lake when the temperature shifts. The sound of something that's been frozen too long finally starting to move. He looked up. Brandon was still standing by the door, waiting for him to leave. Waiting to get back to the real candidates. The ones with unbroken resumes, and no stickers on their backpacks, and no daughters who prayed at lunch because they didn't understand that God doesn't care about job interviews. I have a question, Daniel said quietly. Brandon raised an eyebrow. Sure. You mentioned Secure Frame. You said you license it. $2 million a year. Yeah, best money we spend. Built our entire authentication system on it. Do you know who created it? Brandon shrugged. Some open source collective, probably. The documentation signed DC, but no one's ever figured out who that is. Probably a pseudonym for a team at MIT or Stanford. Why? Daniel opened his mouth to answer, and then every screen in the building flashed red. Not just in the fishbowl, everywhere. Through the glass walls, Daniel saw monitors across the entire floor blink to crimson. The standing desks, the dual monitors, the laptop on the ping-pong table, all of them. Red. A klaxon alarm started wailing. Low. Urgent. The kind of sound that means something is very, very wrong. Kyle jumped up. What the hell? Jessica's laptop was the first to show it. A dialogue box. Black text on red background. Critical security breach detected. Unauthorized access. Database cluster. 40,000 client records at risk. Time to full data leak. 3. A countdown timer appeared beneath the text. White numbers on red. Ticking down. 2:59, 2:58, 2:57. Brandon's phone started ringing. He answered. Marcus, yes, we see it. I don't know what's... He hung up, dialed another number with shaking hands. James, it's Brandon, CTO. What the hell is happening? Kyle was frantically typing, pulling up terminal windows, error logs scrolling by. Someone's breached the firewall. They're inside the main database cluster. Client data, payment information, medical records, 40,000 companies. If this leaks, we're done. Lawsuits, criminal liability. The company folds. Jessica's face had gone white. It's a zero-day exploit, Russian signature. I've never seen this attack pattern before. 2:30, 2:29, 2:28. Priya looked at Daniel, still standing by the door, backpack in hand. Should we evacuate? No, Brandon pointed at Kyle. Shut it down, kill the servers. Pull the plug. That's our entire infrastructure. Kyle's voice cracked. $20 million in annual revenue. Every client. Gone. We'll lose everyone. Better than a data breach. Do it. Wait. Jessica was scrolling through logs. If we shut down without a proper handshake, we could corrupt the entire database. 6 months of data. Gone. 2:15 by your routine, 2:13. The junior developers outside the glass were standing now. Phones out. Some were backing away from their desks. One was already heading for the stairs. Brandon's hands were shaking. Then fix it, patch it, do something. I don't know how. Kyle's voice was almost a shout. This exploit is targeting something in SecureFrame's core authentication. I don't have access to the source code. It's proprietary. It's not proprietary, Daniel said. Everyone turned. He was still standing by the door, backpack in hand. But he wasn't moving toward the exit. He was looking at Jessica's laptop, at the error logs scrolling by, at the signature of the attack. He knew that signature. It's not proprietary, he said again. SecureFrame is open source. The core framework is public. But this exploit isn't targeting the public version. It's targeting the legacy authentication layer. Version 1.7. The one that was patched in 2019, but most companies never upgraded because the migration path was too complex. Brandon stared at him. How do you? Because I wrote it. The room went silent except for the alarm. 1:59, 1:58. Kyle's voice was barely a whisper. What? SecureFrame, I wrote it. 2017 to 2018. Published it under the alias DC, Daniel Carter. He pointed at the laptop. That exploit is targeting a known vulnerability in the legacy auth layer. There's a patch. But you have to override the firewall manually and neutralize the probe before it extracts data. 1:50, 1:49, 1:48. Jessica shoved her laptop toward him. Then do it. Daniel hesitated. His hands were shaking. The keyboard was still Dvorak. He hadn't written code in a production environment in 5 years. What if he'd forgotten? What if the frameworks had changed? What if Emma's text was still on his phone screen? Superdad saves the day. He dropped his backpack, sat down, pulled the laptop closer. His fingers hit the keyboard, and the muscle memory came back. Not slowly, instantly, like riding a bike, like holding Sarah's hand, like braiding Emma's hair. Some things you don't forget. Some things live in your fingers, your wrists, your shoulders. The code came back like breathing. He pulled up the terminal, typed 6 commands from memory. Root prod dub1 or firewall override. Auth legacy 2018 $ probe, detect, source external, signature 0, day ru, probe, neutralize, method silent, log true, patch, apply SecureFrame -1.7 to 2. Exit, 1:47, 1:46, 1:45. The terminal responded. Commands executing, one after another, clean, fast, precise. He typed 4 more lines, the final patch, his signature at the end. Main door ciphers evident protocol override, firewall bypass, legacy 2018 token, probe neutralized, silent method, patch logged. DC. He hit enter. The countdown froze. 1:44. The red screens blinked. Once, twice, then green. Thor. Threat neutralized. Ordum. System secure. No data leaked. The alarm stopped. The silence was deafening. Kyle leaned over Daniel's shoulder, stared at the terminal. What did you just... How did you... The door to the fishbowl slammed open. Marcus Webb, 54 years old, CEO and founder of TechVenture Corp., flanked by 2 assistants, and James, the CTO, 50-something, gray beard, looking like he'd just aged 10 years in 3 minutes. Marcus's face was red, tie loosened, phone in one hand, fury and panic in equal measure. Who stopped it? His voice boomed across the floor. Everyone in the open office could hear him. Who the hell just stopped that breach? Brandon started to stand, to speak, to take credit or deflect blame or do whatever VPs do when everything goes sideways. Marcus walked past him, didn't even look at him. Walked straight to Daniel, still sitting at the laptop, fingers still on the keyboard. Marcus leaned down, looked at the terminal, read the output, the commands, the signature. His face went white. Cipher 77 protocol. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. No, you can't be. Daniel said nothing. His hands were still shaking. Adrenaline crash. The same feeling he used to get after a successful pen test, after breaking into a system that was supposed to be unbreakable, after finding the vulnerability no one else could find. Marcus grabbed a chair, pulled it over, sat down next to Daniel, eye level. Show me your notebook. Daniel hesitated. Show me. Now. Daniel reached into his backpack, the one with Emma's stickers, pulled out the moleskin, black leather, worn soft, handed it over. Marcus opened it, flipped through pages, stopped on a protocol written in pen, handwritten pseudocode, zero trust authentication, the foundation of secure frame. He held it up next to the laptop screen, compared the handwriting to the terminal commands. They matched. Marcus closed the notebook slowly. His hands were shaking. How long have I been trying to find you? Daniel's voice was quiet. I don't know. 4 years. Marcus's voice broke. 4 goddamn years. I've sent 200 encrypted emails to your old Nextech address. I've offered $100,000 just for a phone call. I've told everyone at every tech conference, every summit, every investor meeting. I would give 20% equity to meet the person who built SecureFrame. He looked at Daniel, really looked at him. The flannel shirt, the crooked crease, the backpack with the unicorn sticker. You were sitting in my waiting room. Brandon was still standing, frozen. Marcus, he didn't say he was. Marcus turned, slowly. You were interviewing him? Yes, but his resume. There's a 5-year gap. For what position? Junior developer. 52,000. But Marcus, listen. His skills are... Get out. Brandon blinked. What? Out. Now. Marcus's voice was ice. You, Kyle, Jessica, all of you, out. Marcus, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Brandon. Marcus stood, walked to the door, held it open. If you're still in this building in 30 seconds, you're fired. Understand? Not a threat. A promise. Brandon left. Kyle followed. Jessica grabbed her laptop and hurried out. Priya stood, paused, looked at Daniel with an expression that might have been respect, or might have been apology, and left. The fishbowl was empty except for Marcus, Daniel, and James, the CTO, who was staring at Daniel like he'd just seen a ghost. Marcus closed the door, turned to James. You know who this is? James nodded slowly. I think so. Say it. Cipher 77, the architect, the one who built SecureFrame, the one we've been paying $2 million a year to license technology from, the one whose frameworks protect 40% of the Fortune 500, the one I've been trying to find for 4 years. Marcus turned to Daniel. Why did you disappear? Daniel's voice was steady, calm. The adrenaline was fading, leaving just exhaustion. My wife was dying. So you walked away from all of it? Yes. Stock options? 4 million. Vested 3 weeks after I left Nextech. Marcus exhaled slowly, ran his hands through his hair. Jesus Christ. He walked to the window, looked out at San Francisco, the skyline, the bay, the city that chews people up and spits them out, that worships youth and novelty and the next big thing, that forgets you the second you stop being useful. You built SecureFrame, Marcus said. Not a question, a statement, a fact. The framework that's protecting 40% of Fortune 500 data, The framework that just saved my company from bankruptcy, from criminal liability, from losing every client we have. Yes. And you came here for a $52,000 junior developer position. Daniel looked down at his hands, the calluses from fixing Emma's bike, from painting her room, from 1,000 small tasks that don't go on resumes. I need to feed my daughter. How old? 7. What's her name? Emma. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, I lost my dad when I was 12. He was a factory worker, steel mill outside Pittsburgh. They laid him off at 56 because he wasn't fast enough anymore. His hands had arthritis, couldn't keep up with the younger guys. They gave him a severance check and a handshake and told him they appreciated his 30 years of service. Marcus turned around. He killed himself 2 years later, hung himself in the garage. My mom found him. The room was silent. I built this company, Marcus continued, because I'm tired of watching brilliant people get thrown away the second they're not shiny, the second they have a gap on their resume, the second they choose their family over their career. He looked at Daniel. You chose your wife, your daughter, over $4 million. Yes, most people wouldn't. Most people didn't love Sarah. Marcus sat back down, pulled out his phone, typed something, put it away. I'm creating a new position, Chief Security Officer. You'll report directly to me. You'll rebuild our entire security infrastructure from the ground up. Not just secure frame, everything. Pen testing, threat modeling, zero trust architecture, the whole stack. Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Salary, $320,000. 2% equity, vesting over 4 years. Full benefits, healthcare, dental, vision for you and Emma. 401k match. Stock options at current valuation, which puts us at about $80 million post-Series B. So your equity's worth roughly $1.6 million if we exit. Daniel's vision blurred. But Marcus held up a hand. I have one condition, non-negotiable. If you can't agree to this, we can't move forward. Okay. What time do you need to pick up Emma every day? Daniel blinked. 4 o'clock. Every day. Her after-school care ends at 4. Then you work from home Tuesdays and Thursdays. No meetings those days unless you approve them. And every day, every single day, you leave this office at 3:30 p.m. I don't care if we're in the middle of a deployment. I don't care if there's a board meeting. I don't care if the building's on fire. At 3:30, you leave. You pick up Emma. You go home. You're her dad first. You're my CSO second. Daniel couldn't speak. His throat was closed. His eyes were burning. Because here's what I learned, Marcus said quietly. After my dad died. After I watched my mom try to hold it together. After I realized he'd killed himself because the only thing he knew how to be was a steel worker. And when they took that away, he didn't know how to be anything else. He leaned forward. You're not just a coder. You're not just an architect. You're Emma's dad. And that matters more than anything you'll ever build for me. Daniel's voice cracked. I came here for $52,000. You built something worth $2 million a year. You're worth more than this company's current valuation. Marcus stood, extended his hand. When can you start? Daniel stood, shook his hand. Monday. Good. I'll have contracts drawn up by Friday. James will walk you through our current infrastructure this week. And Daniel? Marcus's grip tightened. Thank you. For not giving up. For coming here today. For being willing to start over. For building something that mattered even when no one knew your name. Daniel nodded. Couldn't trust himself to speak. You need to make a phone call, don't you? Yes. Use the office next door. Take your time. Daniel grabbed his backpack, walked out of the fishbowl, through the open floor plan. The junior developers were standing now, staring, the ones who'd been mocking him an hour ago, the ones who'd taken photos, posted on Slack, made jokes about the old guy who couldn't type, They weren't laughing now. Daniel found a quiet hallway, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. The sun was setting, golden light on the water. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped his phone. He dialed. 3 rings. Each one felt like an hour. "Hello," Emma's voice, out of breath, like she'd been running. "Daddy! Hey, baby! Daddy!" She was screaming, happy screaming, the kind that hurts your ears and fills your heart. Did they say yes yet? I've been checking my watch every 5 minutes, and Mrs. Kim said I had to stop because I was making myself anxious. But I couldn't help it because I really wanted to know. Emma. And I prayed so hard at lunch, like I closed my eyes and everything. And I told God that you're the best fixer in the whole world, and you deserve this job more than... Emma, baby, listen. She went quiet. He could hear her breathing, fast, nervous. Did they say no? He started crying. Couldn't help it, couldn't stop it. 3 years of holding it together, of being strong, of lying to her that everything was fine, that they'd be okay, that Daddy would find a job soon. It all came out in one breath. They said yes. Silence. 1 beat. 2. Then, they did? They did, baby. They said yes. I knew it. She was jumping. He could hear it in her voice, the breathlessness, the joy. I told Mrs. Kim you were the best, and she said I should pray extra hard, and I did, and it worked. Daddy, I'm so proud of you. He was crying too hard to talk, just stood there in the hallway, with the sunset light coming through the windows and his daughter's voice in his ear, telling him she was proud of him. And he thought, this is what matters. Not the code, not the frameworks, not the career or the salary or the equity. This, Emma's voice, her happiness, her belief that prayers work and daddies are superheroes and everything will be okay. Daddy, are you crying? He wiped his face, smiled through the tears. Happy crying, baby. That's okay. That's what you tell me when I cry at happy movies. Remember? You said happy crying is the best kind of crying because it means something good happened. You're absolutely right. Can we get pizza tonight? Please, please, please. With breadsticks? And can I get dessert too? Mrs. Kim says we shouldn't have dessert every night, but this is special, right? We can get whatever you want. Even the ice cream with the cookie dough pieces. Even that. Daddy, you're the best. I love you so much. I love you too, Emma. More than anything in the whole world. More than coding? More than coding. More than cars? More than cars. More than pizza? He laughed. Even more than pizza. Wow, that's a lot. She was quiet for a second. Then, softly, Daddy? Yeah, baby? I knew you would get it. Because you're the best fixer. And when things are broken, you make them better. That's what super dads do. He closed his eyes. No, Emma. You're the fixer. You fixed me. She giggled. That's silly. I can't fix people. You fixed me, baby. You're the best fixer in the world. That night, after he picked up Emma, after the pizza with breadsticks and the ice cream with cookie dough pieces, after she showed him 17 drawings she'd made at school and told him about how Tommy pushed her at recess. But she didn't push back because violence isn't the answer, right, Daddy? After she fell asleep on the couch halfway through Encanto for the 47th time, still wearing her shoes because she'd been too excited to change. Daniel carried her to bed. She weighed almost nothing, 52 pounds, light enough to carry. But he knew these days were numbered. In a year, maybe 2, she'd be too big, too old. She'd want to walk herself. Wouldn't need Daddy to carry her anymore. He tucked her in, the pull-out couch in their 1-bedroom apartment that they wouldn't have to live in much longer. Pulled the frozen blanket up to her chin, kissed her forehead. She stirred. Did I dream it? Dream what, baby? That you got the job. No, it's real. Good. She smiled, eyes still closed. I knew you would. You're the best." He sat at the kitchen table after she was asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the neighbor's music, something with a lot of bass, muffled through the walls, and the sound of Emma's breathing from the other room. He opened the moleskin, the notebook Sarah had given him 10 years ago, before cancer, before Emma could read, before everything changed. Flipped through the pages, the protocols, the pseudocode, the foundation of SecureFrame written in blue ink during late nights at Nextech when he was young and brilliant and stupid enough to think that work was what mattered most. He turned to the last page, a page he'd never read, had never had the courage to read. Sarah's handwriting, a note she must have written before the diagnosis, or maybe during, in one of those moments when she was still herself, still the woman who believed in second acts and handwritten notes and husbands who could build anything. "My love, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're scared. You think you wasted everything. You think you disappeared. You think the last 5 years, or however long it's been, were for nothing. That choosing me, choosing Emma, meant giving up the person you were supposed to be. You're wrong. You didn't waste anything. You built something better than code. You built a life. You chose love. You chose to be present. You chose to be the dad Emma needs, not the dad who's too busy changing the world to notice his daughter growing up without him. And I know, it's been hard. I know the money's tight. I know people judge you. I know you've applied to 100 jobs and heard no 100 times. I know you wake up at 3 a.m. wondering if you made the right choice. You did. And when they see you again, and they will, because brilliance doesn't disappear, it just waits, make them remember why they needed you in the first place. Not because you're a genius, because you're a man who knows what matters. I love you. I'm proud of you. Don't let your code die. But more importantly, don't let yourself die. You are more than your resume. You are more than your GitHub commits. You are Emma's dad. You are the man who held my hand when I was dying. You are the man who chose family over fortune. And that makes you richer than anyone on Sand Hill Road will ever be. S. Daniel traced the words with his finger. Read them again. And again. Outside, San Francisco glittered. Somewhere in that city, Brandon Yee was updating his LinkedIn. Junior developers were Slack messaging about what they'd witnessed. Marcus Webb was drafting a company-wide email about second chances and the danger of dismissing people because they don't fit the mold. But Daniel wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about a crooked crease in a flannel shirt, a stick figure drawing of a dad with a cape, a 7-year-old girl who believed in prayers and happy crying and super dads who saved the day. He closed the notebook. Stood. Walked to Emma's makeshift bed. Watched her sleep. Her small hands curled under her chin, her mouth slightly open. Breathing slow and steady. Dreaming about pizza and ice cream and daddies who got the job. Tomorrow, he'd start rebuilding. A security infrastructure, a career, a legacy for Emma to see and remember. He'd move them out of this apartment into somewhere better. Somewhere with 2 bedrooms, somewhere where Emma didn't have to sleep on a pull-out couch and could invite friends over without being embarrassed. But tonight, he just stood in the doorway of their tiny apartment and let himself believe that maybe, the last 5 years hadn't been lost time. Maybe they'd been the foundation. Maybe Sarah had been right all along. Maybe choosing love over fortune wasn't giving up. Maybe it was the only thing that mattered.